Beatnik, bebop, big, busted, blacks, beat, blowing, beat, bomb, burn, beat, Buddhism, birth, breath, beach.
But on the other hand, there's this situation which is totally wide open right now under a sky which is endless. I mean, literally. And that's what I relate to constantly. Literally that. Literally that.
Okay, here we go.
That. The sky itself. No, I didn't mean picture it. I mean, look at it. See, the point is that above us is, which is what Carol was always talking about, is this enormous space.
Kathy, let's listen to you. I've listened to Alan.
Okay.
It's early in the morning. This is Allen Ginsberg, beat poet of the 50s, 60s activist, and for the past 2 decades, student and teacher of Buddhist, New Wave poetics, and planetary spoken for universal sanity. The poetics of the survival of man, you might call it. For 3 weeks, he'll be joined by his friends, filmmaker Robert Frank and drummer Elvin Jones, as artist in residence at the Atlantic Center of the Arts in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. These men are artists in different disciplines, but they can be said to share what Ginsberg calls the quality of spontaneous mind. Here amidst the quiet of subtropical Florida scrub and slash pine, nature continues to defy the onslaught of asphalt and carbon dioxide. Here, not even the beaches are spared the imperious rule of the automobile. Finding refuge in a nearby lake or a hidden marsh or backwater eddy, life seeks the source of its own replenishment. Perhaps the same can be said of these survivors' rage for risky experimentation in life and in art. Breaking with old forms in poetry, photography, and music, they translated being raw-nerved into jazzy, racy, transcendent, free-form style. Allen Ginsberg today seems less the representative of a beat generation and more like a casino refugee who, having nearly crapped out at the table, has somehow managed with wit and wisdom to have beaten the odds and survived. Ginsberg was born in 1926 and came of age in the late 1940s and the 50s. Plastics and prosperity, institutions growing larger, the Russians gobbling up Eastern Europe, the United States sometimes supporting fascist regimes, more bombs, small businesses fail, corporations expand, the big fish eats the little fish. Japan is democratic, more managers than ever. The world gets much smaller. Wake up, America, Ginsberg screams. He's a poet. That's what they're supposed to do. Ginsberg's friend, writer Jack Kerouac, did not survive. Kerouac, for a while, was the most well-known beat in America. He is best remembered for his novel, On the Road, a book which turned on many generations of readers. His life and writing gift were wasted into death by illness and alcohol, and he died in 1969. But for 3 weeks, Kerouac's presence strongly influenced this gathering. He was the angel hipster, the discontented, paradoxical poet of the open road to nowhere that he came to believe was America's destiny. He opened the neural doors to the future, wrote Timothy Leary, looked ahead and didn't see his place in it. Well, If he were here now, as he once was in the late 50s with Robert Frank on a photo expedition, he might be down on the Strip along the nearby Daytona Midway, hanging out in some garish glare of the neon horizon, the Catholic carouser talking to some guy fresh off the road, some punk inheritor of American middle-class milice. It's doubtful that Kerouac would be on this or any other campus teaching his principles of first thought, best thought. But Allen Ginsberg is, and he carries some of Kerouac with him. But Ginsberg's formal approach surprised his students and forced them to clarify their thoughts.
Long skeins of crochet, what do you call those?
Don't stop to think of the right word.
That's right, I just put a line there.
Could you let me finish my sentence? Don't stop to think of the right word. Stop to think of see the picture better. Don't stop to think of the right word, comma, but to see the picture better is Kerouac's suggestion. When you get into a problem like, what do you call those? So then you just see the picture and describe it.
In this case, I just put a line there if we're going to come back to it.
No, don't ever do that. Don't ever put a line there and come back to it. Finish it there and then. Because if you finish it there and then, you'll still, you know, if you take the energy that you have during the time of writing and pursue it, because that's when you have the picture. You know, whatever occurred to your mind, make use of. And then judge it later. You have plenty of time to judge it. You have all your life to judge it and revise it. You don't have to judge it on the spot there. What rises, respect. Respect what rises. So there's Robert Frank going by, waving his hand, staring at us, looking at us. No, are we worth filming or not? He's wondering what's going on in here. So he's looking. He was looking. You know, he looks with his eyes and he sees things that I don't see actually very often. And then, we were eating at a restaurant lunch. I looked out the window and I saw this dinky old boat sitting out there, you know, some absurd commercial boat. And he looked at it and he started laughing. I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "The boat is amazing." And I said, "What?" And I realized he was actually seeing it, and I was just sort of looking at it and dismissing it. But it was like a little fake gingerbread boat. What for? You know, I couldn't even figure, but something for some totally commercial reason, which he, as a weird Swiss coming from Europe, said, "America is amazing." And he looked at that boat and saw it as part of American exuberance and insanity. And I just looked at the boat and I said, "Oh, just another dinky, you know, White Castle hamburger is that boat." Didn't even notice. So it depends on how much energy you have in your noticing and how much fresh mind that you have.
His main thing that he has done is by purpose, by chance, by whatever, to create an environment in which we would keep forced back on ourselves. What we're doing is the whole process of writing is very much I think of it as a spiral, and you're here and you're here and you're here and you're here and you go right back over the same things. And all you can hope to do is to kind of rise on that spiral, but you're going to go round. You're going to deal with the same things. This is not the teacher I had in mind. This is not the experience I had in mind. But it may be the experience that I needed.
The concept of fresh or spontaneous mind may be said to characterize the philosophy of the Atlantic Center for the Arts. Founded in 1978, the center's revival of the tradition of masters and fellows encourages a free exchange of expression and experimentation. It was the unconventional and spontaneous minds of the Beats that attracted the interest of photographer Robert Frank. Following the publication of The Americans in 1958, Frank earned international acclaim as a documentary photographer in the tradition of Walker Evans. Frank's choice of non-traditional framing and roadside subject matter allowed him to break with the formal portraiture of his father. Meeting the Beats helped him break with his conservative Swiss Catholic background. Frank's first film, Pull My Daisy, produced with Alfred Leslie, featured the young poets Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, painter Larry Rivers, and others. Pull My Daisy was a weird beat fusion of Marx Brothers mayhem, jazz syncopation, Frank's logically illogical framing, and a spontaneous narration by Jack Kerouac. Frank's more recent work with compact video equipment also allows him to speak as he shoots. His subjects have also become more intimate. His latest video exploring his personal relationship with family, friends, and his environment.
I think I can hear the truck. Come around the corner. I wonder if it is the truck. Yes, sir, it is the garbage truck. Very good. They'll be surprised to see me with the camera. Hello? All right. It's a big moment. It's a big moment. Oh, just for fun. For myself, you know. How have you been? All right. Huh? Wonderful, huh? Some winter. Okay.
And I'm going to go up and see what's going on at the Texaco station.
You're walking towards the station.
You never know how bouncy walking is when you see the camera.
Well, you have to learn what the camera does when it's attached to you.
But I've arrived. This is a milk ice gas beer food mart. You know, behind a still camera, I always feel a certain amount of bravado. It's a mask. But with this thing, I feel like a fool. It's not the camera, it's having to talk to it. Who ever heard of walking around talking to a machine? And I'm just wondering how long it takes to get over this self-consciousness. I mean, do you ever really get used to standing here talking to a machine? Could you ever really say what you would just say in your brain if no machine was listening?
When you do your first thing and you know you're taking it to a class and somebody's going to look at it. I know, when I was saying those things, I thought I have to say at least part of what I'm really thinking, even though I know people are going to listen to it, because it does make a difference.
Well, I liked it very much when you said, you know, do you ever say what's true, what you really think, knowing that it's going to be somebody else will see it, somebody else will hear it. It takes great courage to do that. I never had that courage for a long time. I mean, I always hid it in, you know, actors doing it, or, you know. So I think that's good for you to start that.
Jack Kerouac often compared his writing technique to the cinema and its steady stream of moving images. No wonder, then, that he should be joined on the road by Robert Frank, 4 roving, insatiable eyeballs taking it all in, that weird post-McCarthy, pre-Nixon American scene.
Well, Kerouac was a real good guy. I mean, he was very honest, and he loved this country. And he was totally uncalculating and true about it. And I never realized it when I knew him, you know, how strong he was. I mean, I was amazed about how many people know him and how many different segments of people know him and read him and gotten something from him. After we made Pull My Daisy, we had they interviewed us, a big network, and we had to go up there to the studio, and there were 3 or 4 people sitting around the table in a very serious interview. It was in 1960. And we talk about it, the finances, and, you know, and all of a sudden, after about 5 minutes, Kerouac looks at the guy, and says, "Did you clean your asshole today?" Just like that. I said, we're on the air. But it absolutely destroyed the whole, it was not the same afterwards, you know. It was wonderful. Yeah.
More tales from Travels with Jack, Daytona Beach, 1960.
Absolutely.
Listen to Kerouac's description of Florida, Frank tells his students. See if you can shoot some video for this.
Now we are in Florida. We see the lady in the flowery print dress in a downtown Orlando, Florida drugstore, looking over the flowery postcards on the rack. For now, she's finally made it to Florida. It's time to send postcards back to Newark. Sunday, the road to Daytona Beach, the fraternity boys in the Ford with bare feet up on the dashboard. They love their car so much, they even lie on top of it at the beach. Americans, you can't separate them from their cars, even at the most beautiful natural beach in the world. I took pictures
Yeah.
here of the cars, and then we drove to Orlando.
I said, what, you drove down first to here?
No, we stayed in Orlando, and then he said, let's go down, drink some beer in Daytona, and sit on the beach. So we came down here. I think it was a Sunday afternoon. It was crowded, much more crowded than now.
Hot summer or?
It was hot summer, yeah, it was this summer. And then we went back the same day and went back. But I felt similar driving in here now and seeing it again. I haven't been back since.
Oh. So I guess I've seen the pictures you took then.
Yeah, in Evergreen Review, there was an article.
Oh,
and there was
with his picture, with your pictures in his
his lines, yeah, and that's the article you
I see.
begin
Then I'll have to look at that, yeah. I saw it, but I don't remember.
It's not, it's just when I reread it now here, it was stronger and it was more.
It'd be great to look at it now, yeah. And to go back and do it again. Amazing.
Sad, you know. It would be good to call him up and say, hey,
here we are. Do it again.
That's how it is.
I always have this strange feeling of how amazing it is I'm still alive.
Yeah, well,
and have a chance to go back.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember hearing about that trip, but I never thought I'd be in Daytona, or much less with you.
Well, I feel that all the time. You know, that especially on an occasion like that. I'm a survivor. I think he lived more just for the day. Well, you knew him better, but I think that's what attracted me to him, this kind of desperation. Well, you have a family and I have a family, so he never had that really, except his mother. I mean, you constructed that in your life. And I had it right away. I was never alone. I was always responsible for other people, really. And he didn't, and in that way it made him much more reckless. He could do it. I don't think if I wouldn't have a family, I wouldn't be here anymore.
Regarding your art, so your art would be...
No, I think I would have, in a way, led a much more desperate life and probably would have paid for it.
My art is my family.
Your what?
Art.
Your
poetry.
art?
My poetry world is my family. That is, my desk, my papers, building up a book, making letters with a nice book, collecting impressions, observing the sky, and sort of making some registration of that, one way or the other.
But I mean, look at this insane scene. I mean it is more your scene than mine, despite me having a camera. It's the awareness of people really recording your lines.
Well, if they didn't, I would.
Huh?
If they didn't, I would. It would be a line of poetry that I would be doing, or maybe I would do it with a photograph, say, be a little more conscious of that now, or allowing it on a...
Well, you are developing in a regular media monster. I mean, you will photograph, you tape it. One of the strongest impressions I have of you when we went with Julius, when I worked on Me and My Brother, and you went around Kansas, in the truck, and you played, your poetry reading, and we listened to the poetry reading, and then in the car they would be replayed, and sometimes they would be replayed at night. And I was really I thought this is something. I mean, I don't have that.
I was examining. You have to look at your negatives.
Yeah, I look at it once, and I don't even like to do that. I mean, I do it once, and I choose the picture, then I put them away. And then they sort of hound me afterwards. Yeah. I mean, when it's successful, it comes back. People talk about the Americans, and so it's all right. I mean, it helps me. I'm not complaining, but I don't want to always look back.
I mean, you want to be imprisoned by the older perception.
Yeah.
Plus, it's redoubled back and back.
Yeah.
But you can't possibly be imprisoned by it because it's only one part of your thought. In other words, it may come back. My poetry may come back, and I'll re-examine it. And impose itself as like a really strong image, Beatnik or Allen Ginsberg or Howell. But on the other hand, there's this situation which is totally wide open right now under a sky which is endless. I mean, literally. And that's what I relate to constantly. Literally that. Literally that.
Okay, here we go.
That. The sky itself. No, I didn't mean picture it. I mean, look at it. See, the point is that above us is, which is what Carol was always talking about, is this enormous space.
Kathy, let's listen to you. I've listened to Alan.
Okay.
You went to.
So Yevtushenko, the Russian poet, told me last week in Brussels, first thing he'd do if he were U.S. president, he'd go get drunk with the Russian leaders and find out who they were, have a personal meeting with them, punch them in the arm, tell them about your kidney stones, find out what's wrong with them, find out about their wives, make it a human situation, and find out what's going on instead of doing it by remote control, push-button diplomacy, actor diplomacy, everything a roll, everything prepared. It's just the opposite of what Robert Frank was asking for. The president wants everything controlled in advance, and so do the Russians, instead of opening it up for what's going to happen, actually. What they need to do is just get together and have a meal. Come down here to Florida, JB's fish camp, and eat some shrimps together, the Russians and the Americans. Then they can figure out whether they want to commit suicide together or not. Meanwhile, House blocks tests for Star Wars. Trouble with that guy Reagan, he never saw W. Sunflower Sutra. I walked on the banks of the tin can banana dock and sat down under the huge shade of the Southern Pacific locomotive to look at the sunset over the Box House hills and cry. Jack Kerouac sat beside me on a busted, rusty iron pole, companion. We thought the same thoughts of the soul, bleak and blue and sad-eyed, surrounded by gnarled steel roots of trees of machinery. The oily water on the river mirrored the red sky. Sun sank on top of Frisco peaks. No fish in that stream, no hermit in those mounts. Just ourselves, roomy-eyed and hungover like old bums on the riverbank, tired and wily. Look at the sunflower, he said. There was a dead gray shadow against the sky, big as a man, sitting dry on top of a pile of ancient sawdust. I rushed up and chanted. It was my first sunflower. Memories of William Blake, my visions, Harlem, and hells of the eastern rivers, bridges clanking Joe's greasy sandwiches, dead baby carriages, black treadless tires, forgotten and unretreaded, the poem of the river bank, condoms and pots, steel knives, nothing stainless, only the dank muck and the razor-sharp artifacts passing into the past, and the gray sunflower poised against the sunset, crackly, bleak, and dusty with the smut and smog and smoke of olden locomotives in its eye, corolla of bleary spikes pushed down and broken like a battered crown, seeds fallen out of its face, soon to be toothless mouth of sunny air, sun rays obliterated on its hairy head like a dried wire spiderweb, leaves stuck out like arms out of the stem, gestures from the sawdust root, broke pieces of plaster fallen out of the black twigs, a dead fly in its ear, unholy, battered old thing you were, my sunflower. Oh, my soul, I loved you then. The grime was no man's grime, but death and human locomotives. All that dress of dust, that veil of darkened railroad skin, that smog of cheek, that sooty hand or phallus or protuberance of artificial worse than dirt, that eyelid of black misery, industrial, modern. All that civilization spotting your crazy golden crown, and those blear thoughts of death and dusty, loveless eyes and ends below in the withered roots, in the home pile of sand and sawdust, rubber, dollar bills, skin of machinery, the guts and innards of the weeping, coughing car, the empty, lonely tin cans with their rusty tongues. Alack, what more could I name? The smoked ashes of some cock cigar, the cunts of wheelbarrows and the milky breasts of cars, worn out asses out of chairs and sphincters of dynamos, all these entangled in your mummied roots, and you there standing before me in the sunset, all your glory in your form, a perfect beauty of a sunflower, a perfect, excellent, lovely sunflower existence. A sweet, natural eye to the new, hip moon woke up, alive and excited, grasping in the sunset shadow, sunrise, golden, monthly breeze. How many flies buzzed round you, innocent of your grime, while you cursed the heavens of the railroad in your flower soul. Poor dead flower. When did you forget you were a flower? When did you look at your skin and decide you were an impotent, dirty old locomotive, the ghost of a locomotive, the specter and shade of a once powerful, mad American locomotive? You were never no locomotive sunflower. You were a sunflower. And you, locomotive, you were a locomotive. Forget me not. So I grabbed up the skeleton thick sunflower and struck it at my side like a scepter and delivered my sermon to my soul and Jack's soul too and anyone who'll listen. We're not our skin of grime. We're not dread, bleak, dusty, imageless, hopeless locomotive. We're golden sunflowers inside, blessed by our own seed and hairy, naked accomplishment bodies, growing into mad, black, formal sunflowers in the sunset, spied on by our own eyes, under the shadow of the mad locomotive, riverbank, sunset, Frisco, hilly, tin can, evening, sit-down vision. Preface to Collected Poems. This is what I've been working on for the last 3 weeks while I've been here. It's up to page 14.
When are these coming out?
Oh, this will be next year. So that's what's in the typewriter. I'm supposed to finish that before I leave. Those are the notes that I've been working from, who I copied my style from. Complete confession. Dylan, diction, melody, encouragement and reinforcement of my own. Corso, tailoring. Bunting, condensation. Shakespeare, fluidity. Blake, seriousness and psychedelic transcendent reality. Kabir, intensity. Apollinaire and Whitman, catalog. Sanders, Ann Waldman, Creeley for monosyllable. Sendars and Perret for newspaper electric. John Cleland Holmes for thoughtfulness. Orlovsky for heart craziness. Blythe and Kerouac for haiku. Shelley, Poe, Crane for sound. Kerouac for sound, spontaneity, intelligence. Poe for beauty. And Rimbaud, St. Peirce for prose poetry form. William Carlos Williams for measure. Ezra Pound for quantity and tone. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, my meditation teacher, for structure, diction, and accent. Well, either way, this is where we are right this very minute. New Smyrna Beach in the middle of the galaxy.
For a brief time in the late 50s, in smoke-filled jazz clubs, poets and musicians created a blend of the arts that critics referred to as jazz poetry. Uneasy magazine writers reported voyeuristically about the cool versus the hot poets. Watch out, America, they seemed to be saying. These cats are saying no to the American dream. But before the dissectors of the contemporary scene could have their way with this curious animal, it was over. All a matter of record, already being recycled for television sitcoms.
The times that I myself worked in the 5-spot, they began to have rather spontaneously, I would say, poets and who would come in to read and who eventually gradually incorporated the groups, musical groups, in the readings of the poetry. Kenneth Patchen being one of these. Kenneth Rexroth was another. Jack Kerouac, he, not the 5-spot particularly, but at the Village Vanguard. And so he was another. That, as I was saying, it was absolutely fantastic. It was a beautiful following of people. The atmosphere in the club, people were quiet, they listened, I think it went away with a feeling of having experienced something very unique. And this is the kind of feeling, that's the impressions that I got out of it.
Elvin says that at those times, it was more impressionistic and you all improvised together. Sometimes be a general pattern, but mostly one or two people had definite ideas what they wanted and would order you around as a musician. But generally it was just free form. And I thought always the best thing I ever heard was Kerouac's blues and haikus. Kerouac learned it from Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins. He idealized their wailing and blowing and tried to model his prose on the idea of a blues musician taking many, many long choruses on a single theme.
The winter fly has died of old age. Well, here I am, 2 p.m. What day is it? The tree looks like a dog barking at heaven. Prayer beads on the holy book. My knees are cold.
The beats really didn't give me an answer, but they freed me from conceptions I had coming from Switzerland. They showed me that it is possible to try other things. They didn't say that this is the right thing to do. They were for nothing. They were against everything, which I accepted, and it freed me to go on to different things. I mean, that is the great debt I have, I think, to them and their philosophy. I'm very much for going into different rooms. And without the beats, I probably would not have gone these rooms. I mean, a man like Walker Evans.
The beginning wasn't so interesting, but it got good. So just from where it gets... While they're writing down, oh, what an exquisite day, they're thinking, Well, it could be a little longer. I think that's
Bright
special.
purple automobiles rolling along the sand at Daytona Beach.
Did you write anything better
in front of a
than
blue
that?
ocean on a cloudless day.
Okay.
Or some picture is going through their mind while they're just generalizing it to the word exquisite, God, divine, or beautiful, or wonderful, or substituting an abstraction for what they actually
Other
see.
guys brag about.
So I've been trying to find ways of pointing to the original first flash, or first thought, best thought, or original mind, or primordial mind. So I've developed exercises, partly out of the Buddhist training and partly out of poetic experience, to try and point to that area that would be pay dirt, so to speak, a gold mine. And I think more or less most everybody, except with one or two exceptions, has been able to recover a little bit of what they were thinking originally before they started writing down hokum.
So this is Alan Eager, and this is the poetry class. And drag up a chair here.
I'm not afraid of the camera, even though I'm looking right into it.
I'm not afraid of Ginsberg persecuting me with poetry.
I'm not afraid of the youthful spikes in April's hair.
I'm not afraid of wishing somebody were somewhere else.
Not afraid to have nothing to say.
I'm afraid of students who won't sit up straight.
I'm afraid of teachers in general.
I come here to work with students, so what I think most about and occupies me the most is what my students do. And I was very, very impressed really with their level of intelligence, their understanding of video, and their immediate understanding of how to do intelligent work that is, that expresses a lot about themselves, and each student is totally different.
I don't know, she's getting pictures of something.
I don't know. You think you want to lock it up? No, it's too long. Why?
Really?
Hi, Mom. Is the beach full of cars?
Beach will be full of cars and people too.
Won't be able to find a place to park.
Really?
Well, when the tide comes in, then the people have to move their cars. But
yeah.
As long as there's low tide, there's 2 rows of cars usually. We think this is the best time of year to come.
This is your car, this Mercury.
Americans, you can't separate them from their cars, even at the most beautiful natural beach in the world. There they are taking lovely sunbaths practically under the oil pans of their perpetually new cars. The wild ones on their motorcycles with t-shirt, boots, dark glasses, and Ivy League slacks. The mad painting job on the motorcycle, and beyond, the confusion of cars by the waves.
Okay. What is the best thing there?
At Silver Springs?
Yeah.
The glass bottom boats, probably.
Thank God I'm in Florida. I don't have to use dental floss anymore. You're interested in buying something?
From you?
Oh, I got, a lot of old stuff. I got pots and pans and tools and pictures, and I got.
You got the Pokerino, you got the skee ball. Yeah, you get beautiful prizes. You got whack-a-mole,
You got the Boondogs. You got, come down and see Bonnie. I says, let him come down and see Bonnie. That's right. And I'll take care of him. Let him come down at the Midway on the boardwalk.
So then he was putting me like, all I could eat was like one night pork and string beans.
Yeah.
And the next night, you know, 2 different kinds of food at each meal just to see if I was allergic to them.
I see.
The only ones I was allergic to was grapes and, what was the other? Grapes and cantaloupe.
And her grandson kicked the screen door out. She said, I didn't want to shoot him. What would you think of that? Huh?
Would you want a ham sandwich?
Are you all eating it?
Yeah.
I'd love it.
Okay.
Can I go swimming?
If you want to.
Are you going?
No, I just got out.
It has been easy for some critics to write off the Beat Generation as a minor literary phenomena orchestrated by a bunch of maladjusted, discontented nihilists. But at a time the world tried on the big mask of conformity and complacency, the Beats were a minority who asked a lot of basic questions, sometimes disturbing questions. They wanted to shake it up. Don't sell your soul, USA. Ginsberg's poem, Howl, besides being the occasion of a landmark obscenity case in 1957, has deservedly earned the poet the distinction of a major artist. The Whitman-esque quality of that work is also to be found in the poetics of spontaneity, which Jack Kerouac inspired in Ginsberg and others. So despite the mad raving, the moments of self-doubt and self-destruction, we cannot deny them their vision of America.
He takes these pictures, he goes around taking these pictures, and certain ones of them are vivid. And it's sort of things that he sees out of the corner of his eye. And I've watched him take pictures like he'll look at something and see it, and then he'll turn himself away and take the picture and then look again. And as he leaves a little up to chance. She turned away, she didn't take part in the conversation,
Yeah.
but he stood up and then finally sat down.
But I like that about her, the way she sat there.
She didn't move away.
No, she just wouldn't have any part of it.
Yeah.
Travel all over the coast surfing?
Yeah, I've surfed all the way from Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. Surfed all them places. Florida's about the best, Sebastian Inlet.
Really?
Yeah, best place I've been to so far.
Well, if I would be young, I'd like to surf too. Good thing to do. So good luck, huh?
All right.
Okay. All right.
One of the characteristics of the Beat company was that they were all friends, and it was sort of like the Beatles, a gang of friends. It was sort of like a poetry gang, as Kerouac said. A gang in the sense of like, you know, when you're kids, you have a little gang around your neighborhood, and you all hang around together, and you throw snowballs at each other, and get drunk and get laid for the first time, at parties together, and write poems together, or write novels together, or create literatures together, or make other friends, and go around the world together, go to the moon together. when I was a little kid in my childhood in Asbury Park, and I went back with my mother about 6 years ago. It was just about this size, overlooking Asbury Park. And I hadn't been on it for 40 years. I've been on it 35 or 40 years. And I suddenly realized I could go back up on the Ferris wheel.
Well, we've become friendlier and more understanding of each other. I wonder often, how do be if Kerouac would be around, if we would be friends or what. I mean, that's hard to tell. You sort of tend to drift apart often, friends. I mean, as you get older, I have many less friends than I used to have. So you really value the friendship over a long time, and that is, I really value what happens between Alan and me. There is, I think, more mutual respect both ways as time goes on. Well, we are survivors, So survivors celebrate, they get together at Normandy Beach and so on. So we'll get together at Daytona Beach, and shoot a little footage.